Je jembor zordon himi jang doner monum jembor ngap jabda alkar tarngam zandor shirmaldo tomba dikche jan la gi jam zara ne jeror tsengi jan kamsa jawar dikti shenla yela jume banzo jang lang soran de gon je toban bor shingier lo.
The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rare in countless eons. Now we hear and follow it, may we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, let us give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta. In this section, we will continue our detailed discussion on the Udāna Sūtra. The Udāna Sūtra consists of a total of 33 chapters. The previous chapters, which covered the chapter on impermanence, the chapter on desire, and the chapter on craving, it's worth noting that these 3 chapters have already been thoroughly covered. Regarding the chapter that discusses the concept of desire, it is also worth noting that there is a subsequent chapter which is called the chapter on attachment. In between the sections we have discussed, there is a chapter known as the chapter on vigilance. It's important to understand that this chapter is also extremely significant. As a matter of fact, it is highly recommended that everyone present here make an effort to study it very seriously. This study should also include its various commentaries and all related materials. This particular Dharma teaching is exceptionally important. Additionally, its structure is methodically laid out in a step-by-step fashion. To begin, the foundational concept we must grasp is that this entire world and everything within it is fundamentally impermanent. If we don't have the foundation of impermanence, we won't properly listen, contemplate, and practice. In the process of listening, contemplating, and practicing, what is the greatest obstacle? It is greed, the mind of desire. The state of mind we call desire includes a general attachment to people and things in our lives, as well as the various specific forms this desire can take. For this reason, these next 2 chapters will discuss practical methods for counteracting this desire. If a genuine practitioner first understands that all phenomena are impermanent, and then, as a direct result, it reduces their own desire, and pays more attention to themselves afterwards, your practice will definitely succeed. First, to put it the other way around, if you don't have even the slightest sense of impermanence, if your mindset is fundamentally based on the ideas of permanence, unending bliss, an unchanging self, and absolute purity, then as a result, you will find it very difficult to think deeply or to practice with any significant depth in your spiritual cultivation. Therefore, it becomes necessary for us to examine this scripture carefully, one step at a time. Because now some of us are specializing, conducting focused research. If, for instance, an individual spends their entire life specializing in the study of the Udāna Sūtra, they can analyze each chapter. And within each chapter, some chapters have more than 40 verses, while others, for instance, have significantly more than 20 verses. As for these verses, what exactly is it that each one is trying to teach? If we approach it this way, on one hand, we can write commentaries, and at the same time, we can study this sutra itself. In order to truly understand its significance in this world, then what importance it holds for practitioners. For those who lack faith, what significance does it have for them? So in all of these respects, it becomes clear that this topic should be very meaningful. Today we will be moving on to discuss the 4th chapter of our study, which is titled Vigilance. Now, regarding the concept of vigilance, I believe that anyone who has a basic understanding of Buddhism knows that whether it's the renowned Mahayana text, the Bodhikariyavatara, or other important treatises from the same tradition, for example, the Compendium of Training, and in many other Mahayana treatises and scriptures, this topic is discussed extensively. This concept is also discussed extensively in the Vinaya, which is the foundational code of monastic discipline. Therefore, the true meaning of vigilance is to be consistently cautious, thoroughly careful, and to remain extremely attentive in all of one's actions. This is a fundamental principle that is generally well known and widely understood, because if you are extremely attentive, as a matter of fact, whether it's each individual school of thought or people from different eras, everyone has different values. But generally speaking, we should not let our body, speech, and mind stray from virtuous actions. This particular kind of cautious and ever-watchful mindset is what is formally known as the state of vigilance. Now, looking closer at the concept of vigilance, has been explained differently by various great masters. But according to the Agama Sutras, in fact, guarding the mind, protecting one's own mind, this is the essential meaning of vigilance. It is the practice of regularly protecting your own mind, carefully observing its inner workings, and consciously ensuring it does not become involved in creating negative karma. This state of awareness is the essence of vigilance. So, concerning this state of vigilance, it is my sincere hope that everyone will pay the closest possible attention to it. Because a long time ago, when I was translating, during the process of translation, I was also thinking at the time, wow, if there were a chance to talk about the chapter on impermanence, it would probably be very good. If I could talk about the chapter on desire, that would probably be very good too, especially the chapter on vigilance. If everyone could understand it, it would definitely be beneficial for some people. To be honest, I've had this feeling several times before. So this vigilance is truly very important as well. Of course, when we talk about the concept of vigilance, it doesn't mean paying attention to everything or being overly conservative. But it's not about that, because if you're too conservative, for someone who is truly a good practitioner, they might keep to themselves, living in a cave or in a retreat room, never seeing anyone at all. That is acceptable. But if you want to make a commitment, if you want to do things to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings, then your mindset should really be a little bit more open in truly meaningful ways. This is a very important point to understand. Otherwise, if you're afraid to touch this or do that, you will always be feeling anxious and fearful or constantly filled with self-doubt. Your own mind will be very painful, and you will suffer greatly yourself. And it will also be very painful for other people. Generally speaking, our own mindset should be much more relaxed and tolerant of others. This is very important. Then, when it comes to truly important principles, we should do our best not to let our body and mind fall into negative actions, not to fall into the pit of creating negative karma. Doing so causes a significant amount of harm, not just to ourselves but to others as well. On the other hand, if we lack even a little tolerance, there are indeed a great many things that need to be accomplished in this day and age. For example, as a direct result of the rapid advances in modern technology and the evolving developments that we witness on a daily basis, it is now clear that virtually every aspect of human society and our personal lives is undergoing profound and tremendous changes. When we need to adapt to such a social state, sometimes we ourselves also have to go along with the rest of society. If we don't, it may be very, very difficult for us to even survive. Especially now when we are spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings. In the past, at the very beginning, we had to rely on something in particular. We relied heavily on a particular teacher who was personally delivering teachings, or alternatively, writing books and treatises. Apart from these two particular methods, there were basically no other options. If a teacher passed away, and he left behind some of his own writings, then there might be hope. If he had trained some disciples, there was hope. Otherwise, it was very difficult. But now that's no longer the case. In this modern era, there are a great many convenient and accessible methods, and so this is just as the Buddha himself also mentioned within the sacred scriptures, whether it is devas, nagas, yakshas, kumbhandas, or humans and non-humans. When we teach the Dharma, using all kinds of different skillful means, for the devas, he spoke in the language of the devas. For the nagas, he spoke to them in their own native language. And for the asuras and many other groups as well, he did exactly the same thing. And here, by asuras, I mean the real asuras. Some leaders have said, "Why do you call us asuras?" But I have never referred to them in that way. I mean the real asuras. So whether we're dealing with beings like the asuras or the kumbhandas, or many other beings, he spoke to them in their own languages. In the distant past, aside from the one and only true Buddha and bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, previously no one else had this unique opportunity, but now, through artificial intelligence, it can be converted into many different languages. This is also an opportunity for us as future Dharma teachers. It's a kind of opportunity. For example, if someone teaches the King of Aspiration prayers, for a classic text such as the Udāna Sūtra, we have the capability to present it in a vast array of over 70 different languages, and it can completely preserve the original voice quality. For example, if I teach the Dharma, it can use my exact voice. I can speak in English, I can speak in Japanese, I can speak in Arabic, I can speak in any language like this. And when people listen, they will still have that very same feeling, because we can clearly indicate on it that it was converted by AI. For example, this is the original place, and the Dharma being taught is authentic. But in reality, the language is seamlessly lip-synced and then transformed by AI. Now, if we explain it this way, nowadays, whether it's in the business world, the music industry, or the art world, many people are now making use of artificial intelligence, which is also known as AI, while some individuals use ChatGPT for a little bit of polishing, while some don't use it at all. But in any case, this is also an opportunity. In the not-so-distant future, it is likely that many of us, on one hand, need to remain vigilant, be very careful and cautious. During the process of doing this, am I really doing it for fame, for profit, for status, or for money? Is that truly the case? We may also need to seriously reflect on this. But on the other hand, as times change, this space, whether it's people practicing virtuous deeds or those engaging in unwholesome actions, everyone is occupying it. In the process of occupying, we Mahayana Buddhists, if we employ certain skillful means, it's possible that some people may not fully understand the reasoning, and this does happen. However, as long as the action is genuinely meaningful, in due time, it is my hope that everyone will gradually come to accept this reality. At the present moment, the situation is that the Tibetan language system is not as fully developed as it could be, but now, for example, Chinese or English translations, to provide a more concrete example of what I'm referring to, if I speak in Chinese for the entire duration of an hour, in the past we would first add subtitles, then start organizing the script, then proceed with the proofreading and editing. Previously, completing a task like this would require a team of at least 3 or 4 people, and it could take them an entire week, or at the very least, 3 or 4 days would certainly be necessary. But now, the situation is completely different. I only need to say a sentence, and the AI can recognize my speech on its own. Then it can proceed to generate subtitles or instantly convert it, even if some of my language isn't very standard. But if it is truly standard, then it can be done very quickly. For the non-standard parts, AI can learn by itself, and after learning, it trains itself. And after training, it can recognize them, then gradually turn them into formal language, and then finally convert them into text. So our great predecessors, like Mipham Rinpoche and Longchenpa, when they were teaching and giving Dharma talks, if they had access to AI tools, it would have been wonderful to have everything transcribed into Tibetan script. Although the overall usage and conversion rate of the Tibetan language now has not yet reached the same high level as English or Japanese or even Spanish, which have developed so rapidly in recent years, there are still many things that AI doesn't recognize, and sometimes there are a lot of gaps and errors. This kind of situation does exist, but overall things are gradually maturing in this area. So on one hand, we ourselves, when we go online or use these digital tools, might let trivial things occupy our minds, and if they take up our time, it's really a pity. But on the other hand, doing something meaningful in our short lives is actually very necessary as well. So perhaps now, for many people in Tibetan regions, and I think this way too, this includes those who are currently offline, as some of them are with their families at home, while at the same time continuing the important work of doing business in their established physical stores. But actually, the whole world is now almost entirely operating in the virtual space by making use of online live streams and various online marketing techniques with many different methods. So if we find that we don't keep up with the times and our actions lag behind by 20 or 30 years, then in our short lives, there are many worldly and spiritual practices we need to do. It will be very difficult to accomplish them. So today, when it seems like I'm talking about vigilance, it's as if I'm telling you to be vigilant, isn't it? But that's not the case. The key is that you must not be negligent and diligently guard your own mind while doing these things. So in the first, second, and third chapters we discussed earlier, the main focus was on impermanence and the faults of desire. So how do we put a stop to them? Impermanence is just impermanence. There's nothing we can do about it. When it comes to desire and greed, they undoubtedly do have such faults. So what should we do? As practitioners and as true gentlemen, we must use right understanding and right mindfulness to diligently guard our minds. We must not be negligent, and we must always pay special attention at all times and in all places. Whether monastic or layperson, after all, we are all human. If you observe carefully, you'll see that some people become good people for a reason. They are always especially attentive, whether among others or alone. They are very mindful. Some people start out very well, and their wisdom is not bad either. Their diligence is also very good. But later they are eliminated. What is the reason for this? It's because they lack vigilance. They indulge themselves too much, and in turn become too unrestrained and undisciplined. In the end, what happens is they start to slowly and then very gradually decline over time. Eventually, they become beyond help and end up like this. Therefore, the chapter on vigilance is a very important lesson. For any person who lives their life in a negligent manner, their craving will inevitably grow and spread, much like a creeping vine. For those who live negligently, such craving inevitably increases, becoming stronger and more entangled over time. Or, like a vine, it keeps winding and growing without end. This is also how it is described in the Buddhist scriptures. So when we connect these teachings, we need to understand that we must cut off the craving mentioned above and practice with the awareness of impermanence. We must maintain vigilance. So what does vigilance exactly mean? Vigilance leads to immortality. Negligence leads to death. Those who practice vigilance do not die. Those who are negligent are perpetually dying. It seems that negligent people are destined to die. Those who practice vigilance do not die. Those who are negligent are perpetually dying. As you can see, these two lines are repeated. It seems very easy to explain. And in fact, the situation really is very much like this. From what I can see in the commentary, it first tells the complete story behind it. Then it goes on to give some further explanations, which is also a perfectly fine approach. Actually, this particular story takes place within a city. It was called Kosambi and was located in the kingdom of Kausambi. Kausambi is a place that is quite famous in history. Within this kingdom, there were a number of influential ministers. In an act of inexplicable cruelty, they murdered 500 innocent women. In response to this horrific event, and in order to protect his people, King Udāyana later decreed that all 500 of those ministers should be executed for their crimes. Because of this reason, at a later time, the Buddha then recited these two particular verses in direct succession. So for this verse and the one that follows, what is their deeper meaning? If one consistently maintains vigilance, whether it is with one's physical body, spoken words, or innermost mind, one then practices virtuous deeds with a great deal of care. In the process of practicing virtue, one will not stray from it. This is what is meant by not dying. The meaning of not dying is actually attaining nirvana, because nirvana is characterized by neither birth nor death. How many aspects are there to vigilance? One is attaining nirvana, another is achieving a state free from death, and also obtaining the method to attain nirvana, as well as being the path to the deathless, which is fundamentally the opposite of death. So we can therefore describe the important concept of vigilance in four fundamental aspects. Negligence, on the other hand, leads to death. In fact, if one is negligent, one will die. Death means samsara. In samsara, there is constant birth and death, life and death over and over again. There is always death. Therefore, for those who are heedful, precisely because of this, the truly vigilant do not ever die, while the negligent, in contrast, die repeatedly. Actually, the first sentence mentioned earlier, the vigilant do not die, refers to the truth of the path and the truth of cessation. Vigilance is the truth of the path. One practices the path, and as a result attains the truth of cessation. He has already attained the state of deathlessness. Negligence leads to death, actually refers to the truth of suffering and the truth of origin. In essence, negligence is the truth of origin. The suffering that results from this is death, the truth of suffering. These two sentences serve to explain the Four Noble Truths. So, who is vigilant? This term is used to refer to ordinary, everyday people. Individuals who possess the qualities of right knowledge and right mindfulness are considered to be vigilant. So, what is the ultimate result for those individuals who are truly vigilant? The final outcome for them is that they are able to attain the state of nirvana. And what is the result after being negligent? That is essentially equivalent to experiencing repeated death. This means an individual dies again and again within the continuous cycle of samsara. Those who are vigilant attain the deathless state, like Shariputra. Ultimately, he attained the fruit of arhatship. As for death, among the non-Buddhists, there was one called Kashyapa among the 6 heretical teachers. One of them was the son of a slave, and he was named Kashyapa. This was a situation just like his own. And so, this is the essential difference between living with negligence and practicing with vigilance. The Buddha himself also spoke about the profound importance of this in many other sutras. He once said, "Monks, just as among all the footprints of various animals, the footprint of the elephant is considered the foremost and the best. The footprint of an elephant is considered to be especially remarkable because it is the largest among all animals on the land. In that very same way, when we carefully consider the full spectrum of all virtuous qualities, the quality of vigilance is declared to be the most supreme and all-encompassing." So based on this analogy, what we need to understand is that true vigilance is actually extremely important for a practitioner. This is truly a very important point. The great Bodhisattva Nagarjuna also said, quoting the Buddha, that vigilance is just like a divine nectar, while negligence leads to death. Negligence leads to death. Vigilance is like nectar. After the devas, who are celestial beings, obtain the divine nectar, they remain undying for countless years. Such is their state. Therefore, it is important that we practice virtuous deeds. Among all dharmas, vigilance is extremely, extremely important. I often think that in fact, whether it's the great masters of the past or many of the eminent monks and accomplished practitioners today, they all have self-control. They frequently use right awareness and mindfulness to observe their body, speech, and mind. They discern which things they can do and which things they cannot do. For the things they cannot do, they begin to exercise restraint. This includes their own personal desires as well as their long-standing habitual attachments. They often are exactly like when we ride a horse. There is a special rein that is designed for the bridle, and by using it, they can effectively and safely control their horse. In a very similar fashion, the metaphorical wild horse of our mind, if it is not properly governed and directed by these specific antidotes, it may act however it pleases. In the very end, it may ultimately fall down into the deep and profound pit of samsara, which is also extremely dangerous. Therefore, in this section, we discuss this particular verse. Yes, that is correct. This verse essentially means precisely that. Next, earlier, we already discussed in detail the important merits of vigilance. Then, I strongly advised everyone not to join the ranks of the negligent. You must carefully follow the right path and not go astray. The main focus here is on this particular verse. Knowing its excellence, the wise do not become negligent. They greatly and truly rejoice in vigilance and delight in the admirable conduct of the noble ones. Now, regarding this case story, the previous case story, which we have just reviewed, already suffices. So, what exactly is the main point being discussed and analyzed here? We have already thoroughly understood the excellence of vigilance, as was just mentioned. Its numerous merits, its distinct advantages. If one is diligent, speaking temporarily, this person is unlikely to encounter various kinds of slander or malicious rumors against them. There won't be any at all, absolutely. And looking to the future, they can truly attain a state of spiritual nirvana and achieve ultimate realization. There are many merits to it. So, after truly understanding the significant merits of vigilance, as a truly wise person, someone with innate wisdom and deep insight, some people are simply born with it. Just a slight, gentle hint is entirely enough for them. The kind of innate wisdom that immediately understands. And then there are those individuals who, through later profound learning, begin to truly possess genuine wisdom themselves, whose inherent wisdom is awakened. Such people, such truly wise individuals, they have deep wisdom regarding both worldly truths and transcendental truths. They are people of great wisdom. Both men and women can be like this. Some people just need a slight hint, and they immediately become enlightened, instantly awakened. For others, even no matter how many times you really say it, no matter what you say at all, even if the Buddha himself were to speak, it would still be very, very difficult. They become more and more dull, less and less understanding. But as for a truly wise person, they begin to avoid all negligence. Because a truly wise person genuinely understands the profound truth, so they meticulously start to act without any negligence in their behavior and conduct. They are not tainted by the faults of negligence, which can often lead to errors and oversights in judgment and action. After this, what do they truly and deeply love? They are, in fact, extremely fond of and deeply committed to vigilant conduct. Some people are like this by their very nature, or perhaps due to the influences of their past lives, shaping their current inclinations and behaviors. For example, some who become monastics in such cases, at any time, their actions are proper and in accordance with the Dharma, and they are able to control their minds as well. They also speak only when it is appropriate to speak, and remain silent when it is not appropriate to speak. They are especially meticulous in many aspects. If others observe them from the side, they would think this person is extraordinary and remarkable. It is obvious to see. As for some people, because they have not truly observed the deep and profound calmness and true serenity of their own inner minds, their physical bodies may also lack proper restraint, and then, in any given situation, their speech may include saying absolutely anything at all. As for their innermost minds, their thoughts and underlying intentions, all sorts of deluded thoughts arise moment after moment, endlessly. For such people it is very difficult. But what do the wise enjoy? They truly enjoy engaging in a wide and diverse range of virtuous actions such as renunciation, deep meditation, and so on. Therefore, they especially cherish vigilance and non-negligence and delight in the conduct of the noble ones. The noble ones refer to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the great masters and virtuous elders of the past. Their way of conduct. It is not a worldly or particularly base way of conduct. So what exactly is their way of conduct? It is, in essence, the four foundations of mindfulness. The Buddhist scriptures also clearly state that these four foundations of mindfulness are indeed the domain of the noble ones. Therefore, as a truly wise person, one is naturally skilled in practicing constant vigilance and complete non-negligence, as it is clearly explained in the important sutra of the right mindfulness of Dharma, right? Vigilance ultimately leads to liberation. Negligence inevitably leads to suffering. It is through diligent vigilance that one eventually attains liberation. If one is truly negligent, one indeed suffers. This is the way it is. Therefore, as a wise person, he consistently considers things from the comprehensive perspective of long-term enduring benefit and advantage. When thinking in terms of long-term benefit, whether for oneself or for others, non-negligence is truly very beneficial. After understanding these merits, it becomes clear that he will not let his actions be dictated by whatever he thinks or says, doing or saying whatever comes to mind. It is not like that. One should always exercise self-restraint. Many people in this world often say, I am truly free. I can do absolutely whatever I want, say whatever I want, think whatever I want. Many people also think this way as well. But in reality, that's not necessarily the case. There was once a truly unfortunate shipwreck incident that tragically occurred. At that time, on the ill-fated ship, some carefree people were joyfully singing the popular song, "Tomorrow Will Be Better." They enthusiastically started singing together and making a lively commotion, doing absolutely whatever they pleased without a care in the world. But within just a mere few seconds, the entire ship tragically sank beneath the waves. It seems that at that particular time, a total of 442 people tragically died and 12 people were fortunately rescued. So for us ordinary people, indeed, we truly have no idea what might happen in the very next second of our lives. Recently, I've heard that devastating floods and catastrophic water disasters have tragically occurred in numerous places. Consequently, many innocent people were instantly swallowed up by the powerful river currents, a truly heartbreaking sight. So sometimes there's just nothing that can be done. Whether it's a natural disaster or the ripening of one's own karma from past lives, no matter how careful you are, no matter how vigilant, you can still, even at any given moment, be taken away by the powerful and inescapable Lord of Death in the natural world. This is sometimes unavoidable. But for most of us, however, in our lives, most people through their own actions are very rigorous and very cautious. People who are like this in all aspects rarely encounter all kinds of obstacles in their spiritual practice. So generally speaking, for those who are not negligent, they won't encounter particularly major obstacles or adverse conditions. Of course, there are some individual obstacles. One is the karma from previous lives. When it truly comes to karma from past lives, no matter how pure you are or how much you diligently practice, I'm afraid it's still very hard to completely escape it. There was once a bhikshu who, because of his past karma, was boiling his monastic robes in a large pot, and nearby a young herder's calf had gone missing. After it went missing, the local people immediately thought it was entirely his doing and that he was boiling the calf in the pot. Then, upon checking, they indeed found calf meat in his pot. Isn't there actually such a very well-known story in the words of my perfect teacher? So, for things like this, there may be nothing that can be done. Some things are such that when the karma from previous lives truly manifests, whether you are a monastic or a layperson, sometimes things appear out of nowhere. Or you have no choice but to bear the consequences yourself, including some innocent grievances and so on. These things can also happen. Generally speaking, if we consistently follow the established rules of the world, being very cautious, that's what it truly means to be vigilant. No matter who you are, you need to be especially careful yourself. You have to pay close attention in many aspects, whether it's in your speech or your actions, including what we usually talk about. Nowadays, perhaps the most troublesome and challenging thing is posting on Weibo or uploading your own personal videos. Many young people are constantly scrolling through various videos day in and day out. However, some individuals completely disregard and do not consider at all whether the evaluations and perceptions others have of them are positive or negative. When other people deliberately observe you and scrutinize your actions, you might still think, wow, others are praising me. I really might. Like I joked the other day, wow, you're so wealthy. You're so incredibly good looking, so exceptionally beautiful, so remarkably pretty, and so on. Nowadays, some rather foolish celebrities, some widely recognized and famous people, show off their wealth and say all sorts of things themselves, then post all kinds of different photos. In the end, they bring disaster upon themselves and end up with nowhere to turn. They become especially dejected and dispirited. There are so many such cases. So generally, people with wisdom are very extremely cautious. I remember that in the past, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche was also like this. It might have seemed like the master was joking at times, or just chatting with others like this. But every single word he spoke, unless it genuinely carried some very profound, deeply hidden and secret meaning that was not immediately apparent to others, generally, most other people couldn't find any fault with it whatsoever. Truly wise and discerning people, even if they just chat with him for only 2 or 3 short minutes, they can immediately tell that this person is truly extraordinary. From the way he speaks and in every aspect, he doesn't just speak carelessly or off the cuff. That's truly not how he is. There is always a certain profound depth and significant meaning to what he thoughtfully says. So regarding this important topic of non-carelessness, everyone should also consider this. On the one hand, repeatedly reflect on ourselves. How many years have we already indeed lived in this world? During this process, are our actions and words, our conduct and speech, truly and genuinely in accordance with the Dharma or not? Am I truly and indeed living in this world for others to see, or do I live for myself? Many people nowadays are living their lives in front of others, living according to what others say or think. For example, there are some people now. Yesterday, I encountered a Buddhist monk. He said that in a certain monastery, many people are buying nice cars. So he also wanted to buy a nice car. How great would that be? Although he didn't say it directly, that seemed to be indeed exactly what he meant. What was on his mind? Because others have cars, it's truly best if I also have one too. So generally, people with wisdom, they live within their own circle of life. They don't live a life of just simply following the crowd around them without any independent thought whatsoever. So people should very carefully and thoughtfully reflect on all important aspects of themselves again and again, including their body, speech, and mind, and all their various actions. What kind of person am I? What should I do and what shouldn't I do? This is extremely important. Yes.
Tambe de la me pi nyangan de la rakpa yin.
I need to be careful. Is it good for me to drink like this? Drink your tea carefully and mindfully without being negligent. This Udāna Sūtra is from the earlier translation. Earlier and later translations exist. It was translated during the early propagation period and during the later. It should be from the earlier translation, where the wording is very profound. But when it comes to explaining the phrases, the Tibetan is a bit harder to understand. If one consistently and diligently practices there, one will always ultimately overcome other states. The truly steadfast individual will achieve the supreme and ultimate bliss of nirvana. This mainly talks about, earlier we talked about those who practice vigilance do not die. What does do not die mean? It means attaining liberation. So what is it like to attain liberation? Attaining the unsurpassed liberation. Next, the previously established principle is cited and brought forth for consideration. Here, when it states he specifically refers to an individual who is never negligent, someone who consistently and diligently practices. It appears there is indeed a story about this. The story, as it is told, is about someone prominently known as Nyunaga. Isn't that right? In various Chinese texts, sometimes this individual is also referred to as Nyunaga. A person like him, with his unique qualities and spiritual journey, was indeed a rare individual. At that significant moment, the Buddha, with his profound wisdom and compassionate presence, spoke to him directly. Nyunaga, he might have been a bhikshu, a Buddhist monk. The Buddha, in his wisdom, told him not to be negligent. Because, in fact, vigilance is the foundation of all virtuous qualities. From practicing virtuous deeds all the way up to attaining anuttara samyak sambodhi, unsurpassed complete enlightenment, the great merit of attaining enlightenment also arises from diligent effort and non-negligence. Therefore, one must never be negligent in virtuous actions. This particular verse was spoken for this specific reason. It can also be explained in this alternative way. Some individuals mainly interpret this profound statement as referring to a very diligent and dedicated practitioner. If it refers to a diligent practitioner, when the Buddha was alive, there was a person. He went into retreat in the mountains to practice for a period of time. In the end, he did not experience any significant signs of accomplishment or personal fulfillment. Perhaps he was a bit negligent and not diligent in his practice. Then he thoughtfully considered leaving that particular place midway through. As he was suddenly leaving, he clearly saw that the dense forest below had started to catch fire. Eventually, it tragically turned into a raging sea of destructive flames. He clearly and distinctly saw the raging fire engulf the entire vast forest. Later, he had a profound insight. He truly realized that the destructive fire, by its very inherent nature, was so incredibly diligent and utterly relentless, burning up all the trees and vegetation of the forest without leaving anything at all behind. He thought, if that's the case, then my diligence is still not enough. So, with great determination, he began to practice diligently. After a period of dedicated practice, he eventually attained the profound fruits of sainthood. The Buddha, recognizing his sincere efforts, also taught the sacred Dharma specifically for this individual person. There are also such accounts. So, as we just discussed just now, those who practice diligently and are not negligent, they often overcome a variety of other significant obstacles, including personal laziness, a general sense of slackness, and even outright negligence. So how does he usually practice? First, he should rely on and follow a qualified spiritual teacher. Then he listens to the Buddha's teachings. After that, he contemplates the Dharma's meaning. After contemplating, he practices diligently. During the process of practice, he attains meditative concentration. Stated in the Buddha's scriptures, without true meditation, there is no wisdom, and without wisdom, there is no meditative concentration. Therefore, meditative concentration and wisdom truly complement each other. Thus, if one has meditative concentration, wisdom can arise. And with wisdom, meditative concentration can also be attained. So these two are extremely important. Therefore, the noble ones, through meditation like this, and through continuous and diligent practice, what exactly do they truly achieve? A profound sense of accomplishment, because such a person, this truly steadfast and unwavering one, is actually never lax in diligently practicing virtuous deeds and actions, and their will is especially firm. Moreover, those who especially love to gain wisdom are called steadfast ones. In our ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, the term steadfast one often appears. The meaning of steadfast one is bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is truly not destroyed by afflictions. They are unwavering, possessing an especially firm and resolute resolve. That is precisely why they are called steadfast ones. But here, it does not necessarily refer to a bodhisattva. Here it refers to a true practitioner. As for the practitioner, in the end, they attain the path. In Tibetan, the term is contact. However, translating contact doesn't quite capture the meaning. So, attaining the path, there are two types of attainment. One is attainment in terms of the path itself. The other is attainment in terms of the result. In terms of the path, one attains a state of vigilant. This includes temporary meditative concentration, wisdom, and even precepts. All of these profound practices are meticulously brought to their ultimate perfection. Ultimately, one attains the unsurpassed and ultimate bliss of nirvana. Why is this state of profound liberation called truly unsurpassed? In our world, ordinary meditative concentration, for example, when it comes to such attainments, they are not unsurpassed. There are still higher levels. Even the bliss and states of the realm of neither perception nor non-perception, or the peak of existence, can indeed in fact be truly destroyed. Ultimately, when one truly attains the ultimate supreme bliss of a complete state of nirvana, what is this bliss? It is the complete absence of any suffering caused by conditioned phenomena. What is nirvana? Nirvana is when all suffering has been completely extinguished. Such unwavering diligence, such complete vigilance, is indeed our ultimate and most significant goal. In fact, as we have thoroughly discussed earlier, if we truly want to effectively protect this valuable result, it truly requires a kind of vigilance, a state of non-negligence. If we are not negligent, as stated in the Ekotaragama Sutra, before attaining Buddha Dharma or even Nirvana, what is the single most important quality? Then the Buddha said, it is indeed vigilance. Because from the practice of wholesome dharmas all the way to nirvana, so which quality is truly the most important? Which one is the most crucial? The ultimate answer is vigilance. What exactly is vigilance? It is fundamentally about solely guarding the mind, protecting one's own inner thoughts and mental state. You must constantly guard your own mind, protecting your consciousness. Everyone, without exception, must always remember this crucial principle. When you truly remember it, it's always best to keep it deeply in your heart, like an unfailing sacred dharan, and also write it down in clear written words, or in the highest sense, there is a way of remembering without any impression at all, a way of remembering that is free from all attachment to subject and object. When we talk about exams, many people are still very serious about it, and I really do admire that dedication. But whether we're talking about complex cases or indeed anything else, the act of constantly looking at books and always reading directly from the book, on one hand, this approach is very good. It shows that you are very diligent and committed. But on the other hand, it clearly shows that the profound Dharma has not yet fully merged with your innermost heart. Generally nowadays, whether internationally or in society in speeches, the very best speeches are often delivered quite naturally without a prepared script, If you speak spontaneously without a written script, you typically don't really need any teleprompter or anything like that at all. You don't even need a single piece of paper. Just speak off the cuff. This is the best way. This way, whether in terms of facial expressions, including all of its meaning, it is fully integrated into the heart. Nowadays, people think it's fine if it's integrated into the mind as well. Whether it's the mind or the heart, as long as you truly remember it deeply within your heart, you can express everything quite naturally and very fluently. Others may directly and intuitively sense this profound connection. Of course, if we can't say anything at all, that's not good either. If it really doesn't work, first look with your eyes, and after carefully reading, filter it thoroughly through your heart. After filtering it properly, then say it out loud with complete confidence. In this particular way, sometimes, even if you occasionally mispronounce some words, even some famous political leaders often mispronounce words, there are also some funny jokes and stories about this internationally. Because everyone here is young, right? When we reach 60 or 70 years, it's hard to remember things if we want to. It's difficult. But maybe if a person truly has a very certain habit, they often rely on one essential thing. Of course, it is understandable that not everyone can realistically be expected to memorize all the verses in sacred chants. Didn't I mention this the other day? For example, in the biography of Khenpo Acho, his teachers, when they taught the way of the Bodhisattva, adornment of the middle way, and entering the middle way, many of his teachers were basically taught to them from memory. Even texts like The Great Illusory Net were taught this way. This is something we absolutely cannot do. But at the very least, for most of the content inside, it's best if we can remember it ourselves. That would probably be the best. Of course, if that's not possible, some of our own methods are also quite good. When everyone is just starting out, maybe the requirements don't need to be so high. Because with the Udāna Sūtra, after I thought about it quite repeatedly, I truly wondered at the time if it might be just a little too simple. But then I thought many of the lamas and nuns here, their level of Buddhist understanding is very high, but their proficiency in Chinese may not be as high. So at that time I prepared several books. Later I prepared the Udāna Sūtra. I also asked some Khenpos and Khenmos about it. I asked whether it would be better to teach this or that. Later a few people told me that maybe the Udāna Sūtra would be a bit better. Now, I still don't know if it's too simple or too difficult. I'm not quite sure yet, but in any case, we are all happily studying, and that's great. Indeed, some people have told me as well that we are very happy during class. I can feel that too. Whether it's the person who is speaking or the person listening, this is actually a very joyful part of life. Last year in these places of ours, many Dharma friends were also very happy. They were also very willing. But because the concept of impermanence had appeared, they might, for the time being, have to temporarily pause their opportunity to enjoy this feeling of happiness. But it's a different story in other places. One can also enjoy the joy of the Dharma on their own. It's not necessary to always stay in one place forever. For everyone present here, in terms of your overall mindset, whether you are listening or speaking, facilitating or discussing, or even when you are offering Dharma or giving an oral exam here, please don't be too nervous, sad, or worried about what's to come. In fact, you should try to treat it as the absolute happiest thing. Actually, I also give exams every day, and I am under even more pressure when I do. At first, I would desperately work through it on my own. If I had enough time, I think I could basically manage it as well. But the main issue is not having enough time. More importantly, translation is very troublesome. When it comes to translation, if you get even one word wrong, everyone will notice and say, oh, that's a mistake. If you get 100 words right, no one will mention it. But if you get one word wrong, they'll say, there's a mistake here. Why? It is so simple. When it comes to speaking, people say, that's a slip of the tongue. You just weren't paying attention. That kind of thing happens. So when it comes to written translation, everyone refers to this as the translated version. I sincerely hope that during your translation process, you will be exceptionally rigorous and meticulous with the written content. Please use all your wisdom to transform it into the final text. Otherwise, of course, even some of those very famous translators in the past, some of the things they left behind also have obvious mistakes. There are clearly some areas like this. It's inevitable. This might even include many notable individuals, such as the monk Xuanzang and the scholar Kumarajiva, even when their Sanskrit and Tibetan versions are fully compared. There are a few possible issues in certain places. We don't dare to say anything about it, because they were just too remarkable. So when we translate and then put all of these things into writing in the future, we must be extremely cautious, absolutely cautious. So let's see, what was it we were just talking about? Yes, we were in the middle of discussing these specific things. Okay, I'm realizing that for today, I'm going to need to speed up the pace a little bit. Let me just take a quick look at the time. And it looks like someone was kind enough to bring me a bit of milk. But I have to admit, I'm a little hesitant to drink the milk. It's really quite fascinating because sometimes after I've had a little bit of it, when I come back to look at it again, oh wow, it has already turned into yogurt. That is the official end of this particular part. When the wise are vigilant and destroy negligence, They ascend the palace of wisdom and, free from sorrow, contemplate the suffering masses, like a sage standing atop a mountain, looking down at the people below. As for this story says that in the past, there was a man who made a living through negative deeds. He was especially careless and negligent. After the Buddha personally imparted the profound teachings of the Dharma to him, he started to diligently practice giving the Dharma and also giving material things. Later on, he successfully emerged from the accumulation of negative karma and mental defilements. Then he renounced the household life and began to practice. In the end, he attained the ultimate truth. This verse should be referring to him. There was also another person, it is said, in the city of Shravasti. Some people, because they had a lot of wealth, later gave up their wealth and eventually became monastics. After ordaining, they practiced methods to transcend the three realms. They attained sainthood. This teaching was for them. There are different versions of the story. So, as for the wise, the main point here is that by being vigilant and not negligent, people can attain liberation. This is the main aspect being discussed. A truly wise person is vigilant. He is always able to overcome any form of negligence. This is because, as mentioned earlier, when one is vigilant, one is endowed with right knowledge and right mindfulness, and so he is able to overcome negligence, because negligence has several significant faults. One is that it does not protect one's own life, nor does it protect one's own strength and abilities, and it also fails to protect one's own mind, as well as failing to guard against one's own afflictions. You see, all of these issues we've mentioned are the direct and unfortunate drawbacks of negligence. So when you have destroyed all negligence, a person such as this has in fact already ascended to the hall of wisdom. Just now, we spoke about the importance of diligently practicing the path of learning. And in the end, if one successfully ascends to the unsurpassed hall of wisdom, that individual has already attained the highest possible state of the path beyond learning. At this point, he has no suffering or distress whatsoever. He possesses the profound ability to contemplate the truly countless and boundless sentient beings who find themselves perpetually tormented by immense suffering. To use a simple analogy to better illustrate this point, it is very much like a wise and perceptive person standing far atop a very high mountain, and then looking down thoughtfully with his eyes at the vast masses of people below the mountain. At this particular time, he basically already knows how these people below have come and how they will go. He is completely aware of all their comings and goings. He knows every single detail of it like the back of his hand. In the same way, this ultimately means that a person who is vigilant, through their own dedicated effort and profound spiritual cultivation, they can ultimately reach the very highest peak of their spiritual practice. And at that point in their journey, he once again sees the many sentient beings. The countless sentient beings who are indulging in body, speech, and mind, living carelessly and experiencing all kinds of suffering. This is very much like, in front of someone who possesses clear sight, there are some foolish individuals who start to indulge themselves in fleeting worldly pleasures. This really makes one feel that these particular sentient beings are truly and profoundly pitiable. Even among the community of us who are engaged in the practice, there are some individuals who practice particularly well. These people, later on, will often admonish their own disciples and others connected to them, constantly giving them advice. A number of the old teachers I once relied on are no longer here now. However, I remember hearing from them and reading in their biographies that in their younger days they were also known to be mischievous and often a bit relaxed when they first began, rather unruly and wild, just like that. But later, after diligently subduing their minds through the Dharma, their behavior became fundamentally and completely different from that of ordinary people. At that time, within their own mental continuum, all their profound wisdom and great compassion were poured out to those with a karmic connection, like a full bottle being emptied. And they also felt, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Many dedicated teachers care for their students in a way that is very similar to how parents raise and educate their own children. As a result, they are always imparting a wide array of valuable lessons and wisdom. Actually, this should be because within their own continuum, they already possess the merit of vigilant. They are truly unwilling to enjoy it all alone by themselves, such a truly wonderful state of being. They must pass it on to sentient beings with a karmic connection. Many of us, including those living in cities, when they are in the Dharma and have gained tremendous benefit from it, they simply can't keep it to themselves, and they think that I should share such wonderful truths of the Dharma with those suffering beings around me who are in such agony, and share it all with them. If they share it, even if it brings just a moment of relief from suffering, or simply for a moment of true peace and genuine happiness, it is still, in fact, extremely valuable. And so for this reason, it is quite common to see that they also possess this particular kind of determined and resilient spirit.
Through
diligence and vigilance, pure discipline, gentle restraint, the wise crossed to the other shore, traversing the great river. To illustrate this point, it is said there was once a certain city in the past, and in this city there lived the young son of the city lord. One day he came to stand before the enlightened Buddha and said, "Buddha, it seems that you can only compassionately guide and liberate a very small number, or even just one sentient being, and not all of them. Why is that? Why is it not every single person?" The Buddha then replied, saying, "That is simply impossible." Why is it impossible? He then gave an analogy. For example, a certain farmer has 3 distinct plots of land. Regarding these 3 plots of land, one of them is exceptionally suitable for cultivation, as the land is remarkably flat, completely without any thorny bushes or large trees, and the soil is wonderfully fertile and soft. The second plot of land can also be cultivated, but in contrast, it is quite barren and would require significant preparation. The next plot has no grass whatsoever, and overall it is a relatively desolate and empty area. Following that, the third plot is entirely saline land, meaning it is full of salt, a characteristic which makes it completely unsuitable for any kind of farming. So in summary, these are the 3 plots we are dealing with. So, from the perspective of a farmer, which plot of land would he choose to cultivate first? At that time, the person said, it should be the best land, of course. Because the farmer truly wants to get a harvest, the farmer will naturally cultivate the very best land first. If for some reason the best land cannot be used, his next choice would be to move on to the second plot. The Buddha then said, "In this respect, I am the same way. I also observe that sentient beings have different inclinations and capacities. For any being whose particular inclination has reached a state of full maturity, I first begin to tame them with the Dharma, and then I proceed to teach them the profound wisdom of the Dharma." It is in this context and for this specific reason that the Buddha spoke this profound verse. So what is the deeper meaning behind this teaching? In essence, it is a teaching that refers to the fundamental virtue of diligence. Here, as a practitioner, I have come to understand that actually, only when all kinds of conditions are present and come together, can one become a truly good practitioner. It is not just a single factor, or having a little merit in one aspect, that is enough. So what kind of conditions are needed? The first key principle is a form of diligence, a kind of dedication that does not slacken, either day or night. Secondly, just as we have discussed earlier, constantly and carefully guarding one's mind against negligence. It seems that in some of the commentaries, the previous diligence is considered to be the root of diligence. Among the 5 powers and 5 roots, this is the root of diligence. And vigilance is the root of mindfulness. Upholding pure precepts, constantly guarding one's body and speech. The specific kind of correct discipline is truly the fundamental root of concentration. This is because he constantly needs to guard his body and mind in order to subdue and regulate himself, so he diligently guards the sense doors and makes use of the 3 kinds of wisdom to clearly discern reality. Then subdues and trains himself. This is called the root of wisdom. Among the 5 roots that we usually talk about, there is also the root of faith. But in the commentaries, the root of faith does not seem to be very prominent. So, such a wise person reaches the other shore. He is able to cross the great river of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Now, as a matter of fact, in the commentaries, it says that the wise make themselves an island and can turn back the torrent of death. But this meaning seems a bit hard to understand. So, in the commentaries, it is explained in detail that the so-called island, it refers to the other shore, which means to reach the other shore. So in terms of meaning, at first I wondered if it should be the wise make themselves an island and can turn back the torrent of death, translated in this way. But later I thought maybe it should be the wise reach the other shore, because earlier it was about diligence and vigilance, as well as discipline and self-restraint. If one possesses these 4 virtues, then such a wise person will have no problem attaining liberation. When they attain liberation, this underlying reality remains steadfast and unchangeable, as it is a truth that none of the inherent sufferings of our existence, the ordeal of birth, the inevitable process of aging, the affliction of sickness, or the ultimate finality of death, can ever manage to overturn it. And so in the Samadhi Raja Sutra, it is also specifically mentioned that the wholesome dharmas spoken by the Tathagata, such as discipline, extensive learning, the practice of giving, also known as generosity, and unwavering patience. Among all these, the principle of vigilance is the fundamental basis. And finally, this is what is called the supreme wealth of the Sugata, what is referred to as the truly greatest wealth of all Buddhas of the 3 times, is precisely these very qualities. It is certainly not the case that the Buddhas of the 3 times, or highly accomplished practitioners, are defined by possessing material things like gold, silver, jewels, cars, or houses. These are the kinds of wealth typically valued by worldly people. In contrast, for true practitioners, followers of the Buddhas of the 3 times, their greatest and most profound wealth is found in the cultivation of unwavering diligence, pure ethical discipline, and consistent self-restraint. If one genuinely possesses such invaluable qualities, then ultimately, where will they arrive? They will reach the other shore of liberation. They will attain liberation. And at that time, he will no longer be subject to the cycle of birth and death, nor will he be swallowed up by these rivers.
yang tar dom dang chu jin cho dang vagyo nam ki chakba ngombar per
Through unwavering diligence, constant mindfulness, pure conduct, and wise discernment, by making this pure discipline the very foundation of one's life, and by never being negligent, a person's good reputation will surely grow. Now, regarding the story that is related to these principles, it is said that there was a certain prince whose main ambition was to achieve great and lasting fame, who asked Shakyamuni Buddha, "Venerable Gautama, how can an individual attain widespread fame among people?" In response to this inquiry, the enlightened Buddha compassionately shared his wisdom by reciting the following meaningful verse. Furthermore, within the ancient and historic city of Shravasti, there once lived a man who was identified by the name of Konagasa, and this very same profound teaching was also specifically imparted to him for his own spiritual benefit. No matter to whom it was addressed, this story is ultimately about certain people. Just like so many people nowadays who are incredibly eager to become famous, you know what I mean? Especially in this modern internet age, it seems countless people even dream of becoming well-known celebrities. So if you genuinely possess some kind of inner wisdom, inner meditative concentration, and inner skill, then becoming famous is also possible. But if you don't have much inner substance, and if you rely on some false or dishonest means to gain your fame, in reality, it actually doesn't have much real meaning. Yet many people still do this. That particular prince might have been very much like this as well, because as a general observation, leaders, rulers, and princes, they all have a very strong desire to be famous. It's something they enjoy a great deal. Many people want to become celebrities seemingly overnight. However, in reality, becoming a celebrity is often one of the most painful things. If we look at the many famous people in the world, we can see their lives are not truly free or at ease. Everything that they do is always under the public spotlight. Everyone is watching. If they do 100 good deeds, they might not necessarily be praised for it. But if they do even a tiny bad thing, or if they reveal even a little bit of their own flaws in their behavior, then the whole world will criticize them. Because in this modern day and age, a vast majority of people from all around the world, whenever they happen to catch sight of their idol, that one particular individual whom they admire and hold in the highest possible regard, they feel that person is like the Buddha Shakyamuni in their hearts, completely free of any stain or impurity. But once they discover that this person has the same flaws as ordinary people, they just can't accept it. Some even start to have suicidal thoughts, while others begin to criticize, slander, and all sorts of things happen. So, when it comes to so-called reputation, it is certainly better if a person's public reputation truly matches who they actually are. For example, if someone is truly remarkable, I think, like His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, he was truly extraordinary. But at that time, he wasn't the most famous person. However, relatively speaking, he was still quite well known in our Kham region. But it seemed that even his reputation wasn't enough. He actually deserved much more recognition. He possessed many worldly and transcendent virtues. Some other people, although they are famous, their reputation doesn't match who they are. It truly doesn't. So the question that is brought up here is this: what kind of person truly deserves to be famous? One is someone who is consistently diligent and who is genuinely enthusiastic about performing virtuous deeds, also possessing mindfulness. He consistently maintains a state of right awareness and mindfulness, ensuring he never strays from the path of virtuous actions. He also possesses the roots of diligence, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. These correspond to the 4 roots as well. Then regarding his pure conduct, this means his actions are always very pure. Because when one's conduct is pure, the mind naturally settles down. Skillful discernment, being good at observation and wisdom. Because if one is good at observation, one can attain the supramundane path and nirvana. With right discipline, it means that all of his actions are completely free from any kind of spiritual defilement, and also living by the Dharma, understanding the truth of the Dharma, not contradicting the path, relying on the Dharma as one's way of life, or living by truth, living by wisdom, and finally there is vigilance. Here, vigilance. There are 6 important qualities mentioned earlier in the teaching. Vigilance here refers to vigilance ultimately and completely. Vigilance ultimately. True vigilance is attained upon reaching the state of arhatship. If one attains arhatship, that is what is known as true vigilance. Wasn't it in the great hall of good deeds in the heaven of the 33? There, many heavenly beings discussed and praised it. Someone in the human world had actually already attained the vigilant arhat fruit, an undefiled state. At that time, all the devas in the Hall of Good Deeds praised it. Ah, today in the desire realm, so-and-so has attained the vigilant fruit of arhatship. Here, his vigilance means all the defiled actions in your conduct have been completely exhausted. This is what is called so true renown in the Buddhist tradition, is actually the attainment of the ultimate fruit of arhatship, attaining the enlightenment of dzogchen, attaining the realization of prajna emptiness. In this way, these are the truly vigilant ones. Otherwise, if you're just going to pretend by putting up a few advertisements outside, and then you piece together some photos of yourself, well, although I have to say, some people nowadays are really quite interesting. For example, the other day I heard someone mention that these particular people, the ones who do this sort of thing, there were complaints about seniors dancing in squares, or something like that. I didn't really look into it much. But then someone else said, who hasn't been old before? Actually, these elderly people, when they were young, they might have been better looking than you. And then a lot of people started saying, wow, he's right. Of course, this is a positive way to become famous, instantly famous. But if you become famous all of a sudden, I think maybe it becomes a bit painful for them. They used to be just ordinary people, living completely freely wherever it was that they went. No matter where they went, they weren't under surveillance. The reality of the situation was that they were not constantly being watched. Everyone just lived their own simple, ordinary lives, living well on their own. But it's because of some unexpected spike in your click rate. A great many of us are exactly like this now, aren't we? Always, day and night, trying to figure out precisely how to substantially boost our own online traffic. So, in order to get more clicks, you're constantly thinking about what kind of special photos to take. On the other hand, for some people, they will say things that are not so good, things that people normally wouldn't say, including saying unpleasant things online. And then suddenly they become famous. After becoming famous, they're happy, whether it's shameful or not. They think, anyway, now I have fame. But they don't realize the pressure and backlash that come with fame. So, truly wise people make a point to carefully reflect on everything they do over and over again. Only after such reflection do they achieve a kind of fame that comes from vigilance. So when it comes to fame, there is such a thing as empty fame, and there is also genuine recognition. Some truly accomplished individuals, some good practitioners, it's fine for them to have a bit of fame too. After all sentient beings who form a connection with them benefit from it. But for those who lack such merit, if they become famous, even if they have many fans, many die-hard fans, casual fans, all kinds of fans are, as Venerable Longchenpa said, in finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. Even if one has many disciples like swarms of insects, it is still meaningless. It's the same, this kind of fame as well. Pursuing fame and fortune truly has no real meaning. If you waste time on this and don't spend it properly on listening and contemplation, it's a bit of a pity. So here, this prince really wanted to become famous, but I don't know what he would ultimately end up becoming. All right, we'll stop here for the time being.
Udāna Sūtra L14